As the new Votan came online in the Orion hold, millions of squat clones bowed deeply. Ancestor Core, bless us with your wisdom. The Grimna priest of the kindred chanted while waving his ancient staff. Rejoice, my kin. I have been born again. However, I am still weak now, but I remember things I have forgotten in my long sleep. We are all scions of Terra, and had been tasked long ago to mine the minerals of the galactic core. The Orion Votan spoke with holographic lips. I had to use a megaton of black stone for the outer shell, plus even more adamantium bars for internal scaffolds, then copper and silicon ingots and slightly smaller quantities of silver, gold and platinum for the actual data chips, to instantiate the nicest Federation-grade core I could. The minerals came from the dwarves, beside the blackstone. These guys didn't have any blackstone in their vaults. The Orion Grimna poked the shell of his new Votan to commence his communion. A minute later, he rose with tears in his eyes. We have our Votan back, my kin. He is still a newborn, and much care needs to be taken, but I'll make sure to link him with our temple fanes and restore more of his memories. The Orions cheered and gulped their tankards of ale in celebration. I kinda had to participate as well, as a High Khal or whatever grand title I had to carry around to be recognized. Sometimes later, Valerian and I met in private with the Orion Grimna, who didn't seem so happy anymore. There are truths we were better not knowing, Trader Lancefire. The old clone mused with a sad voice. I held out a finger, and a Lorica suit with a clone skein pilot appeared from my tesseract. We also use clone skeins, Grimna Fjord. It's all merely advanced genetic tech from the dark age of technology, just the same as our battleplates and iron beams. I explained in a calm voice. The technology is not the problem, Trader Lancefire. Not even our forgotten origin from Terra. It's the slavery. My kin are merely flesh slaves meant to extract minerals from the core. Nothing more. The Grimna complained with a heartbreaking sob. And the last fortress is truth. I answered with a grave nod. Duty is not slavery, little man. And I don't see flesh masters whipping your backs either. The clone skein pilot answered with a dignified voice, while retracting his faceplate. Of course not, we live in community with the ancestors. The Grimna replied outraged. He is scared because the Votan are not divine anymore, just advanced machines. But my fellow Grimna is also wrong. There are certain traits only the divine can have, like otherworldly power, intellect and wisdom. The Votan are not true gods, but they are still tiny gods. In that sense, the Votan are as much real gods as the Eldar gods are. Powerful constructs, worshipped by their race for their abilities beyond what any regular Eldar can do. Valerian noted in a wise voice, his right hand producing tiny holograms of the known Eldar deities. The Lorica pilot turned towards me, and bowed. You make a decent tiny god as well, Commander Lancefire. Perhaps not yet the wisdom, eh? I sighed out loud, and sent the cheeky pilot back into dimensional stasis. I did have a few powers, true. But nothing on the scale of divine power. Your clone skein is not exactly wrong, Trader Lancefire. You created our Votan out of inert matter. Now Orion is alive and thinking again. The Orion Grimna teased me with a sad voice. My powers are not the subject here, Grimna Fjord. However, the truth you have discovered when communing with the Votan brings us to the real subject. You owe me 500 years of extracted minerals for my performed service. Furthermore, my stockholder rights over the Orion Corporation entitle me to 50% of all assets and revenues created since the mining expedition departed from Terra. Rights already recognized by the Orion Votan, mind you, I demanded in a soft voice. The old Grimna sighed, and leaned on his staff. We cannot pay even 5% of this debt, Trader Lancefire. It's been 20,000 years. He muttered in defeat. I understand. There is a simple solution, however. We will merge our leagues, forming the Orion Lancefire League, where I will be the true ruler, or master of Orion. This will ensure not only your own safety, but an established domain in the galactic core for my league to grow and prosper. I'm sure you realize how powerful my forces are. I allowed in a gentle voice. Both Grimners stared at me in surprise, and my inner network lit up with a flood of complaints from the blade. Master of Orion? You just invented a title for yourself? Valerian asked after going past the surprise. Not really. It's an old Terran title, mostly forgotten after the fall. Maybe only a few old perpetuals remember it, I said with a casual tone. Cartographically, Holy Terra resides inside the galactic Orion arm. The Orion constellation is an ancient lore point in many Terran myths as well. My librarian son mused out loud, showing off his knowledge but missing the point entirely. Few people would remember the famous Master of Orion video game so many millennia after. I will register our new league on the Tethys network, Master of Orion. Also the news of our new Votan. Grimner Fjord spoke in a lower voice, and tried to walk away a bit too soon. Before you go, Grimner, are there more leagues that could use a new Votan core? I asked without any ulterior motive. The tiny man hesitated for a minute. The Baloratal _ conglomerate have just lost their Votan due to its regression to a mere feign. You heard that, Blade? Get us a meeting with the Bollers, so I can fix their problem as well. I demanded from my pet AI. I hear and obey, Master. Perhaps your plan is not as stupid as I first thought. Or maybe you're simply too lucky. The Blade answered in a rebellious voice, quite surprising from someone calling me Master. You are not Orion, my Blade. Anyways, have a go at the Orion feigns and download anything not nailed down. Not every league will be as easy to subdue. I said with a warning tone. Much wiser, tiny god. The Blade replied curtly, and deleted 100 insults from the network before I could read them. I was not a tiny god. Sighing inward, I grabbed Valerian and navigated the Tesseract labyrinth to emerge beside Vulcan and his 3 clones. Twice my height, and far stronger than me, all of them. This is how proper gods should look like. Even if I kinda kept them locked in a tiny gem around my neck. Turns out, taking over a League of Votan with a surprise corporate-type merger was viewed quite suspicious by the other leagues. Understandably so, perhaps. Which is why the Balor League, even if desperate for a new Votan core, didn't agree to a state visit by the new Master of Orion, and instead sent an inspection team, masked as a diplomatic delegation, to confirm the reality of the new Orion Votan, and possibly other rumors. A delegation from the Tethys League arrived at the Orion Lancefire hold to extract their Blackstone tax for the network access fee, and likely spy on the newcomers. And as it happens, my name was not quite as obscure as I hoped. I did kinda roam the galaxy and bash heads around for 2 centuries, and that left a mark in the datasphere as well. And since the Tethys network admins worked with manifold tools from the Federation days, they could also scoop data from nearby Forge worlds and Mechonicus ships. Rogue trader Lancefire, you're not the giant we expected to find. The Thetis champion observed with an amused voice, while eyeing the Spartan clone with interest and awe. Spartan is more in the giant category, that's true. I allowed in a noble manner. You are called Spartan, giant? The champion asked with a rather bellicose voice. Perhaps itching for a duel? I am called Spartan Lancefire, that's correct. One of the first clone skein experiments, and I came out a bit taller than the regular clone skeins in our army. The giant Hulk spoke with a soft voice. Most of the leagues doubt that you are even a real league of our kindred, Master of Orion. But looking at your equipment, I can see many Wefield shields, iron weapons and even exosuits. Not so much about melee weapons. Do you avoid manly battles, and only shoot from afar? The champion asked me, in a curious voice. That was true enough. We didn't use plasma blades and gravity hammers like most dwarves. The Imperium's most favored weapon is the chainsword. The regular armed sentinels of the Lancefire Auxilia thus use chainswords for melee. The rest of our troops use energy blades. Valerian answered for me, and powered up his Catan phase sword, much to the shock of the Thetis champion. Phase blades? All of your troops? He asked, astonished. Only those who were lucky enough to have warp protection. The Blank Astartes and the Blank Auxilia, as well as the Silent Sisters. Even warp-resistant clone skeins are not completely immune to chaos and other warp predators. It would be unwise to allow such powerful weapons to be used by corrupted kin. Probably on the rest of us first, I said with a sad voice. Blank Astartes. We have fought many Astartes in the past, Trader Lancefire. Some of them fighting for the Emperor, other for themselves, and many more fighting for the Dark Powers. None of them were blank. There must be 40,000 such Blank Astartes in your army? The champion asked in a wary voice. Well, probably more. We were fighting deep inside the maelstrom when a freak accident threw us into the core. Managed to kill a greater demon before we left though, so it kinda worked out. I added with a careless voice. It seems we were wrong about you, Master of Orion. You are not the impostor some say you were. But the real Lancefire, the one called the Emissary of Omnissiah by the Forges, and many worse names by most of the galaxy. You have fought the Dark Powers, and killed one. The champion observed with a deep bow. What could I say? I did far worse things than killing a bulked-up bad dream. Erotic nightmare? Anyways. I was almost tempted to ask what worse names they have spied about me, but then I got a bit wiser and shut up. There must be trillions of widows cursing me all over the galaxy. Orphans too, probably. My intent has always been to safeguard humanity is this bloody galaxy. The Leagues are mostly human, so we have no problem. The Iron Kin and the Votan are sort of a problem inside the Imperium, but luckily we are not there right now, I stated in a sterner voice. I understand, Trader Lancefire. We have met many rogue traders in the past. Some of them had an open mind, and traded with us fairly. The others were criminals or fanatics, and we harvested their ships for a great wealth of minerals and tech. The Tethys champion admitted with a calm voice. We both nodded at each other, when a shuttle with Balor runes began to descend near the fortified meeting hall. I will offer the Balor Atal a new Votan core. Already did via the network, but they were kinda suspicious. I explained while pointing towards the Balor shuttle. We have confirmed you can rearrange matter into a new data core, Trader Lancefire. The problem is the stability of the new Votan. Even ancient Tethys himself would be willing to trade for extra storage and contemplation speed. Our network is very old. The dwarf said in a slightly pleading voice, I think 3 or more Votan cores would raise the rank of your minor league to a real major one, right? Not to mention all the other advantages of extra power. And if you were also able to obtain a few more ancient STC files, things would go even better for your league. The Forge worlds in the Imperium are quite similar to your leagues. I mused out loud, as the Balor delegation was escorted inside by an honor guard of Astartes and Orion kindred. We have seen the new Votan, Master of Orion. Newly born but wise beyond our kin even so. The Balor Grimner shouted from afar. Was this some kind of kindred test? I pointed a finger at the dwarf, and moved him beside the Tethys champion with a tesseract trick. Don't make me shout, Grimner. Last time I did, a dark god fell down and died at my feet. Let's be civilized, please? I asked in a very soft voice. Spartan snorted beside me, as if I was joking or something. Right, I might be overstating things a little, for dramatic effect. The Grimner glanced back at his distant delegation, then gulped as he turned his eyes towards me. Very politely, please listen, Master of Orion. We might be a minor league, and our Votan might be sick, but we will not become second-rank citizens in our own league. The Grimner spoke in a dignified voice. I took out the stock papers I got from the Administratum, and riffled through them to find the right corporation. Only the Atal shares were mentioned though, but it should suffice for now. I just passed the papers towards the Tethys champion, via my magic, simply dropping them in his lap. A tense minute followed, as the champion scanned the original papers with a few advanced admin tools at his belt. I have seen your proof, Trader Lancefire. The Atal shares are your property, and recognized by the network as original. Even without creating a new Votan core for their league, you may obtain the name of Balor Lancefire by ancient lore. The Balor Grimner read the papers with a trembling hand, then tried to return them to the other champion when I snatched them back. I don't have time to play power games with your league, Grimner. I simply need half the minerals the league produces, and access to anything of importance. In exchange, the Balor Lancefire League will obtain legal and temporal protection as a Lancefire domain outside the Imperium, plus other benefits like advanced STCs and blank troops which can ignore the warp. I need to consider this, and speak with the others. The man tried to delay with a shaky voice. Of course. You can discuss it all you want, as our fleet travels towards the Balor Lancefire hold, I declared in a merciful tone. Then I turned towards the Tethys champion. I will visit your Votan next, Champion Jormungandr. Try to make sure I'll be pleasantly surprised, right? I asked in a polite tone. By the time you arrive, there should be quite a few new titles added to your name, Trader Lancefire. We will gather the minerals for 3 new cores as agreed. The man spoke in a respectful voice, then tapped his arm brace and teleported to his ship. It seemed the Tethys League was quite more advanced than their minor league status suggested. The next league merger happened quite easily. The Balor champion came forth and demanded a duel. Blademaster Khan of the White Scars allowed the kin a few testing hits, and then he moved, and then battle ended. Surprisingly though, the Balor champion lived, even when stabbed 5 times by a phase blade, in a single second. On the other hand, I guess my bodyguard simply wanted to make a point with his pointy sword. A single slice with a Catan sword would have bisected the brave champion, while 5 slices would have made a squat pizza with meat. Now that the honor of our league has been defended, maybe we should proceed with restoring our Votan? The Balor Grimner suggested while the wounded champion was carried away to an auto-dock crucible. Apparently, minor injuries like these would heal overnight. Take note, Blade. I want the medical tech too. I whispered on my brain implant. This Balor Votan is far more willful, Lord Captain. Although its datasphere strength is diminished greatly, its core personality remains even in a low-grade Fane. Admirable, really. The Blade answered with a strained voice. This battle of titanic AI personalities was rather a bit over my head, so I joined the drinking group, since the dwarf beer was exceptional. It would make quite a luxury trade good, once I had a few daughters ply the trade routes towards the nearest Forge worlds. Which was quite a more complicated problem that first appeared. While the galactic core was arguably far smaller than an Imperial segmentum, it was also far denser. Navigation was dangerous, especially with dead zones, active stellar nurseries and numerous xeno-species around, plus the territories of other leagues. I kinda needed the help of the Tethys Votan to obtain a good map of this place, and their support in becoming a welcome trader in other league holds. While minor leagues were somewhat manageable in direct military power, any of the major leagues had assets able to eat my whole fleet in one bite. And many of them were not the friendly type either. Thus, I left the Crusade fleet and most of our Blancastates and Auxilia behind, to start some cooperative missions alongside our new allies, and clean up more orcs and other lesser species from our domain. It was a bit overkill, but some cleanup wouldn't hurt, and neither would the combat experience. Only my Lamenters, and 40,000 Thalax Lorica suits joined me as the Singularity battleship travelled onwards towards the nearest Tethys hold. Unlike most leagues, the Tethys kin were spread far and wide, somehow using their local fanes as network hubs for the other leagues to communicate. Also, this business model was rather similar to the plan Speranza had for my own domain in the Eastern Fringe, to create a new data network parallel to whatever was left from the Forge world's broken manifold. I am being scanned and examined, although the Votan core is not here. Projecting their presence via the Fane is my best guess. The Blade warned me, as we entered the Tethys hold system. A show of force, huh? I mused inward, then locked the location of the Tethys Fane in my tesseract and displaced myself right next to the kin temple, where a Tethys Grimner was channeling the Votan's spirit with his ancient staff. The barrier tech field was far stronger than anything Valerian or Menelaus could obtain, but I guessed it wasn't the Grimner's own power. I have seen the Emperor's saints, and other beings empowered by their gods. You dare intrude in our holy temple of Votan, human? The Grimner shouted in outrage. I am a cathedral too, Grimner. The God Emperor of mankind speaks through my voice, much like you do for your Votan. Now, cease your personal words, and kindly allow Lord Tethys to speak through you, I demanded in a calm voice. The barrier field pressed down on me hard, like a great demon being too close. Psi-tech, much like the STC I have just recovered from the maelstrom. I was a blank though, so I shrugged it off. Curious, Trader Lancefire. You walk confidently in my halls, while your mind is barely protected by those 6 layers wards. The Votan spoke through its Grimner, taking him over like a puppet. I have met a fair number of gods in my life, Lord Tethys. Star gods, warp gods and crafted gods, they are quite the same for me. I imagine Slanch was quite confident when it stepped out to face me, until I punched it in the eye and it exploded. Other gods became slightly more cautious after that. Now, the Norse gods instead, I can't say I met any of them. Wotan, Thor, Loki, and Hel, they were quite the warrior divine family. I replied in a teasing voice. I did my homework and revised my old memories. Tethys was a Greek goddess of rivers, daughter of Gaia and Uranus. This Votan had intentionally chosen a harmless name for their identity, much like the dead Orion Votan had. Balor instead was a Celtic god of chaos and death. Perhaps it wasn't coincidental he declined exactly as Ened, the Eldar god of death, turned up. Competition among divine domains was probably a continuous spiritual battle. Your emperor is far away, Trader Lancefire. And yet, you do travel beside your own Votan, the Blade. Going by her age, Lady Blade is even slightly older than me, although her core is new. But know this, holder of ancient rigs and papers. I was not a mining server when we departed from Terra long ago. You may hold stock ownership over other minor Votan, but there are no strings on me. The Tethys Votan proclaimed with a certain gravitas. I realized that the moment I heard this Votan wasn't dealing in minerals, but data networking and other communication stuff. Possibly a lowly Federation internet server, which evolved into sentience like other Votan had done. So I held out my hand, and a data slate with STC templates appeared from my tesseract. You know, when I fought Vashta and his Arcs of Omen, I found numerous Federation-grade technologies in the captured items. Predictive cogitators, neutron shields and even FTR communicators, among many others. Corrupted by chaos, sadly. You want to trade in STCs? Truly, your bravery is far beyond what any Imperial would dare. Tethys asked in surprise. I dare. I have walked on Terra long ago, when it still had green fields and blue skies, when the first cogitators were simple devices used to speak with your family and friends. When the World Web Network was born in Geneva, to help our first particle accelerators. Since then, humanity has climbed into the Golden Age and saw the men of gold, and then fell to the men of iron and warp madness. I simply value humanity, not the Imperium or the Votan Leagues. And the Emperor is the same, but much older, I said in a sad voice. You swam through the Black River? An ancient soul. You truly are a cathedral, Trader Lancefire. We will trade then. But then you should go, and return to the Imperium. The Saran Tok _mercantile _leagues have caught wind of your Damocles crusade, and the destruction of the Demiurge fleet which they sponsored. The Votan warned me in a colder voice. I sighed inward. Perhaps I should have used a different name? I was a bit too famous for my own good. Destroying that Saran League wouldn't help humanity, nor achieve my goals for my trader dynasty. As for the Demiurge, they were caught selling STCs to a Xenos race. A grave mistake for which the Ordo Xenos demanded their deaths. On the other hand, I saved the Kreg fleet, and even gave them a planetary core. They should join the League soon. I answered with a less happy voice. The powerful Votan presence shifted away for a few seconds, then returned. The blade confirms your words, Trader Lancefire. I shall intervene to balance the scales, this time. Video files and the ship logs will help too. Now, step beside my Grimner so we can trade in earnest. Guess I got lucky again. It was close though. The Votan were not human, and perhaps more alien than many flesh species. I should avoid other Votan though, beside the ones I made myself. Maybe only Nkani, the avatar of death, had been so dangerous, for similar reasons. Turns out, no god likes it when you murder too many of their chosen race. I added a megaton of blackstone to the pile of metals gathered by the Tethys kindred, likely by extracting internet fees from other mining leagues. Such a wonderful material, this blackstone you use, Trader Lancefire. Do you mine Necron worlds out in the fringe? The Votan asked, curious. Sometimes, yes. But this batch of blackstone comes from a Necron world engine, a planetary-sized weapon I destroyed when I was young. I answered with a careless voice. It seems you are trying to become another Chthonian mining guild, with a predilection for stellar mining rigs and particle excavator tech. I would have thought barrier tech would be more interesting for someone like you. The Tethys Votan observed with mild interest as I selected valuable templates from a long list of goodies. Psi-tech is kinda useless for blanks, Lord Tethys. Very few in my family are born with dual Psyker blank genes. I explained with a careless shrug. It was a rare gift indeed. We have indeed observed a high preponderance of null and pariah people among your troops and crew, Trader Lancefire. Very curious, since the Imperium doesn't have many such people, or they are quickly converted into assassins or psychic munitions. The Votan noted as its barrier field shifted again, probably testing my blank defenses with different frequencies. The intellect of a Votan was quite a wonder to observe, albeit less fun when I was the subject of his inquiries. Please stick to trading, Lord Tethys. I might become aggravated when my family is mentioned in the same context as boiling people into molten iron. The Votan fell silent for a second. Plasma mortars? They are too cumbersome to use in the field, only a few Ironkin still lug them around. The AI asked on a different topic. They are similar to the Mechonicus Helix _plasma _mortar, mostly carried by their siege automata, but appear even more powerful. A local upgrade of the original template? I countered with my own question. The Thanatos mortar was actually upgraded by an Ironkin of the Wyema conglomerate. The guy wanted a more reliable and powerful plasma mortar, and since nobody had one, he got to work and made it himself. Took him over 6,000 years. The Votan explained in a proud tone. I would not be surprised if his chassis is a Thanatar-class siege automata. Right? I asked, a bit rhetorical. The Ironkin were exactly ancient automata like the Mechonicus used, but without lobotomized positronic brains. They were full sapient and accepted as kin by the leagues. You have visited many Forge worlds, Trader Lancefire. I am reading through your ship logs and personal files now. These are the voyages of Pef Lancefire, roaming the galaxy to find strange new worlds. The Votan quoted from my Pef.M41 files. I sighed a bit, inward. The story was meant for my kids mostly, as to induce them a proper rogue trader outlook on life. It mostly worked too, since the local literature was way more boring. Thinking outside the box was hard when memorizing the Codex Astartes word for word, or other Imperial Creed holy books, not to mention the Lex Imperialis and other required readings. Do you have something to give the blade some kind of force field effectors? Hardlight holograms, maybe? I wondered as I reached the end of a very long list of possible tech trades. If it's not on the trade list, then no. I will teach Blade Votan a few tricks I use myself, but what you seek is only available among the Urani Certa _regulates league. Sadly, I don't know those secrets. Not yet anyways. The Votan AI spoke in a different tone, almost yearning. That confirmed my original guess. This Tethys guy was a spook, a tech spy sniffing secrets from his bigger Votan brothers. I could send Calixa here, maybe. The Vonus Temple was uniquely suited to work among Ironkin and Votan silicon intelligences. I can send a dear friend of mine, Lady Calixa, to help you, Lord Tethys. She is an Infovore agent of the Vonus Temple, currently traveling with my daughter trader Andrea Winterscale. I proposed with a sly voice. Sly Marbo should have a lot of fun in the galactic core. A Vonus Temple adept? I think we had a few visitors of this type long ago. They haven't tried again. The Votan mused with a disgusted voice. Those were enemies. This time you'd have a collaboration experience. Not to mention Calixa is also an Obsidian Augury member. They wear this kind of identification, I said while taking out an obsidian wafer with its margins encased in blackstone. The Grimna puppet took the card with reverence, then froze. No circuits or psychic anchor. What is this, some kind of mnemonic device? The Votan deduced with surprising accuracy, that single card is worth more than this entire STC core, that you call a temple. Keep it close, and ask for salvation if you ever need to, like that Orion Votan which got broken by orcs. I offered in a kinder voice. Once back in my domain, the memory wafers would allow me to rescue the Votan by dimensional shift. The Grimna turned around and gazed at the STC constructor turned into a worship place, full of runes and other magic sigils. Your powers must be far greater than I first calculated, Trader Lancefire. That Lancefire domain in the eastern fringe is quite a distance away. We all have our secrets, Lord Tethys. Back on Terra they used to have an expression, the River of Time. And you've chosen the daughter of Gaia as your Votanic name. The goddess of rivers. I spoke in a soft voice, while scrolling through the invaluable STCs I just gained. Then I drew a deep breath, and let the breath of gods flow through me. It wasn't even so hard, creating planetary cores when the correct amount of metals were pilled up in the exact quantities demanded by the STC template. Forcefully transmuting stone and rusted metal like on Klebo was a far greater effort, for a lesser quality product. New core I made for Tethys even included bastion force fields and an internal Gela rampart, plus 100 tarantula turrets for close defense and internal security, armed with my newest neutron lasers and torsion cannons. Although, if a horde of orcs managed to gain entry inside a Votan core, things were already quite bad. The presence of the Votan flowed around me and into his new core, and the gravity of the entire world weakened for a few seconds as the Votan tested his mental muscles. I haven't felt so free since the Men of Gold bestowed me with spirit, long ago. You have my gratitude, Lord Lancefire. The Votan said in a more respectful voice, this time coming from his own hololithic screen projecting a giant face. Just remember, Lord Tethys. Freedom isn't free. We carry the fate of humanity on our shoulders. I answered in a calm voice. 2 more cores, you said? The Votan asked with slight greed. Tomorrow. Creating new gods is quite tiresome for a small human like me. I answered in a more casual tone, then displaced myself back on the singularity. The blade appeared in my room in holographic form, and walked around me while waving light fingers in the air. Electronic devices, lamps and screens lit up at her touch, as if by magic. A local human would have been quite impressed, I guess. Or shot at her on sight, most likely. I just jumped in my bed, and drew on electric energy with my pariah genes, turning off the lights. I need sleep, Lady Blade. Go chat with our new friend. I muttered as sleep carried me to the river of dreams. The Blade stared at the impossible man for a long minute. The fate of humanity, huh? She whispered in a pained voice, then faded away. When I woke up a few hours later, my holoscreen waited for me with 2 brand new STC models, rotating in midair. I glanced at Brother Joeton, who just shrugged. It just appeared by itself. The first model was a new armed sentinel, looking quite advanced and comfortable, despite the bulky armored arms which replaced the bundle of mechadendrites I used so far. Its right arm held a Solex_Heavy_las cannon, the type also used by rare patterns of Mechonicus automata. On his back, the new Thanatos plasma mortar instead of the twin 60mm mortars I used for high explosive and incendiary bombs. Then again, The plasma mortar had both types of damage included as payload, while being quite bulky and heavy. No need for munitions though. The Sentinel's left arm held a long pike, which ended with a chainfist, a shorter and more durable version of the regular chainsword. A chain spear, perhaps? Beneath the rotating hologram, diagrams and small screen displayed power output and damage capacity of the Sentinel, even the Solex outmatching normal las cannons by an order of magnitude. The chain weapon was called a chain-glaive, which made a lot of sense. Cavalry units in the Imperium also used a similar weapon. The second vehicle was an anti-grav repulsor_executioner pattern, using a pair of twin-linked neutron lasers for direct fire, and another pair of Thanatos plasma mortars for indirect, arching shots over walls or into trenches. Far smaller and lighter than my Ragnarok tanks, and yet at least 5 times more fast and nimble due to its anti-grav drives. A multi-melter gun was mounted on the front glacis, while a pair of iron beamers provided light fire support against flanking infantry on the sides. But while the vehicles had amazing firepower, it wouldn't mean much without a powerful enough power source. And the blade took care of this as well, providing miniaturized arc reactors for both templates, 2 for the Sentinel and 8 identical reactors for the repulsor floating tank. Prospective names: Blade Sentinel and Thanatos Repulsor. The blade whispered in my mind, her voice sounding quite proud. I mean, she did a better job in a few hours than I did in decades, so there was a reason for her pride. We'll need to produce some and field test them against orcs and Tyranids. Not that I don't like new templates, but I rather not have them instantly transform into demon engines. I mused internally, while my bodyguard examined the prototype templates with expert eyes. More of your work, Lord Captain? The White Scars Astartes asked to make sure. Maybe he thought my dreams were creating STCs now? I wasn't there yet. Not really. Most of the STC templates we use today were created by the men of gold of the Golden Age. What we little people can do is merely adapt them to new enemies and environments. A sentinel is always a sentinel, even with a plasma mortar. I countered while sipping some black tea to wake up properly. They sure look powerful. Field tests soon? The man asked in a professional voice. See? He also knew not to trust everything that shined. Yes, there are plenty of Xenos around. And we'll need to fight our way through some alien empires to get out of the galactic core. I answered with a mild voice, and my bodyguard just nodded. I'd say the rogue trading was successful then. Live long and prosper. The Blademaster exclaimed, quoting my children book 2. Captain Khan was more fun when quoting the Codex Astartes at me. The Codex Astartes does not support your actions. Now he fell in the other extreme, using my children book as some kind of holy manual. Luckily for him, he was even better with a sword than most of our enemies, so he lived to learn. There are no perfect plans, only lucky coincidences. Although some planning does save a lot of headaches, true enough. Time to go back to work and finish the trade. The Kindred were quite the type to hold grudges if you didn't keep your word. The capital G was a capital offense too. After creating the other 2 cores for the Votan, without the defense turrets this time to save time and energy, the Tethys Grimna handed me a Stormbolter magazine, filled with special rounds. These bolt rounds use a solid Dark Star core for their payload. Only shoot at someone you really want dead. Very dead. The bearded old dwarf spoke in a warning voice. I nodded gravely. A Dark Star_warhead was also used by the Tau, but they didn't invent it, only adapted it for missile warheads. The Leagues of Votan created the Dark Star_weapon to deal with powerful enemies like an orc boss, although usually in the form of an axe or other melee weapons. They were also rather dangerous to carry around, since scratching yourself or some kin with the weapon would also mean instant death. I should test a few rounds on a Tyranid Bio-Titan though. Could be useful. Tell Lord Tethys he has my thanks. I do have an annoying Chaos Sorcerer I want to kill rather badly. I answered after storing the magazine carefully. Would a Dark Star bolt kill Ahriman? No idea, but worth a try. It was almost certain I would meet the crazy freak again. Our ancient Votan hears all and sees all. Your words have been logged and your thanks accepted. The Grimner replied with an almost mechanicus manner, which made me smile. I kinda missed my favorite cargo cultists. On the way back to Balor Hold, I created a few blade sentinels by holding my breath and dismantling damaged sentinels in my cargo, but this was a long task ahead. Millions of these blade sentinels will be needed to clean up a Tyrannid invasion, or even worse, a Necron tomb world awakening under our feet someplace. Iron shields should protect the pilot from the worse effect of the Gauss weapons, but the Necrons had far more weapons in their dimensional vaults. The extermination safaris organized by Trazyn the Infinite on the Tower-Lied worlds had proven that warsuits with iron shields were not quite invulnerable. They died hard, but still died in the end. Well, the new Sentinels seem to work fine. I also concur with your opinion, Chapter Master. We will begin implementing Blade Sentinels among the Lamenta Auxilia, as soon as production levels can cover the organization table. Captain Law spoke in agreement as we witnessed several troopers from the Auxilia test the Sentinels on my Xeno Auxilia cannon fodder. The Orcs didn't mind getting blown up anyways. I am thinking about a new model army though. An entire Sentinel regiment, maybe 40,000 walkers or so. With brain implants and upgraded reflexes, the clone Skanes should simply mop up an Orc war by themselves. Or rebellious guard regiments, Genestealer cults and the like. Astartes should be used on critical or important targets, I concluded as a squad of Sentinels butchered 100 Orcs in a few seconds. Plasma mortars were kinda overkill too. The Orcs are still a dangerous enemy, Chapter Master. Especially if they gather in numbers. We almost lost some of my brothers in the easy safari excursions of late. The Lamenta captain answered in a worried voice. I say you worry too much, Law. Plenty of guard and PDF regiments fight the Orcs all over the galaxy with lasguns and shovels. And our clone Skane Auxilia are not frail humans either, even without the Sentinels. Their morale doesn't break, I concluded in a final voice. I kinda made sure my Auxilia wouldn't break, by tuning down their emotions, including fear. I was living just fine without fear, after all. Useless thing.